Return from the Abyss, Book 1.
Chapter 13. The Catacomb Raid and the Shadow of Mehron. The entrance to the catacombs was hidden in plain sight, a crumbling mausoleum in Greyhaven's oldest cemetery, its stone doors long since rusted into permanent openness. Most citizens avoided the place, believing it haunted. They weren't entirely wrong. Caden stood with 14 other hunters in the shadows outside the mausoleum, waiting for Thorn's signal. The night was moonless, clouds obscuring even starlight, which was perfect for their purposes. Surprise was their greatest weapon. Kai Raymond stood at the front of the group, his white cloak exchanged for dark leather that wouldn't reflect light. The paladin's face was set in grim determination, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "Remember," he said quietly, his voice carrying just far enough to reach them all, "cultists are fanatics. They won't surrender. They won't run unless we break them completely. Show no mercy, because they'll show you none." Beside Caden, Myra adjusted her armor for the third time, a nervous habit he'd noticed during their training sessions. Then clutched his staff with white-knuckled grip, his face pale even in the darkness. On Caden's other side, Jarek Stone, the grizzled B-rank hunter from Myra's original group, checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. "First time raiding cultists, boy?" Jarek asked quietly. "First time raiding anything," Caden admitted. "Stick close to the A-ranks. Let them handle the heavy lifting. Your job is to survive and kill anything that tries to flank us." Jarek's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. "You've got talent, but talent means nothing if you're dead." "Move out," Thorn's voice cut through the whispered conversations. The guildmaster stood at the mausoleum entrance, his massive frame silhouetted against the deeper darkness within. "Silent advance. Kai leads point. Myra, your second line with the heavy hitters. Healers and supports stay in the rear. Go." They descended. The stairs were ancient, worn smooth by centuries of feet, slick with moisture and something else, something that made Caden's enhanced senses recoil. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay, and underneath it all, something acrid and wrong that burned the back of his throat. Dark magic. He'd never encountered it directly before, but some instinct born of 10 years in the abyss recognized the taint. The stairs seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into bedrock far below the city's foundations. Caden counted 300 steps before they finally leveled out into a corridor. The walls here were covered in those same strange symbols he'd seen on the cultists' weapons, runes that seemed to writhe when viewed from the corner of his eye. Kai raised his fist, signaling a halt. Ahead, the corridor branched in 3 directions. The paladin closed his eyes, his hand pressed against the wall. Faint golden light seeped from his palm, spreading like veins through the stone. "Left passage," Kai whispered. "I can feel darkness, concentrated, many people." His eyes opened, glowing faintly with Luxar. "That's where they are." They took the left passage, moving in single file now, weapons drawn. The corridor twisted and turned, leading them deeper. Side passages branched off at irregular intervals, but Kai's Luxar guided them unerringly toward the concentration of dark energy. The sounds reached them first, chanting, multiple voices, speaking in unison, words in a language that made Caden's scarred palm itch and burn. Then light, not the clean white of Luxar or the warm orange of torches, but a sickly purple-red glow that pulsed in rhythm with the chanting. The passage opened into a vast chamber. Caden's breath caught. The space was enormous, easily 50 meters across, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness overhead. Ancient pillars carved with more of those writhing runes supported the structure. But what drew the eye was the center of the chamber. A massive circle had been drawn on the stone in blood, still wet, still reeking of copper and death. Within the circle, geometric patterns formed a seal so complex it hurt to look at directly. And arranged in precise positions throughout the seal were 10 abyss shards, each one pulsing with scarlet light that resonated with the others in a harmony that felt fundamentally wrong. 30 cultists surrounded the seal, all wearing dark violet robes, all chanting in that terrible language. Their voices rose and fell, and with each wave, the shards pulsed brighter. The air above the seal was tearing. That was the only word for it. Reality itself was being pulled apart, revealing darkness below. True darkness, the kind Caden recognized from 10 years in hell. Things moved in that darkness, shadows with teeth, claws that scraped against the barrier between worlds. Any moment now, the seal would complete, and those things would pour through into the city above. Now, Kai roared, all pretense of stealth abandoned. The hunters exploded into the chamber like a storm. Kai led the charge, his sword blazing with golden Luxar light. The radiance pushed back the sickly purple glow, and where it touched the cultists' robes, fabric began to smoke and burn. By the light, the paladin's voice rang with command and power. You will not defile this city. A wall of golden energy erupted from his outstretched hand, cutting across the chamber and slamming into the nearest cluster of cultists. The barrier was solid, tangible. Cultists who tried to pass through it screamed as Luxar seared their flesh. Myra was right behind Kai, her body already glowing with Taro's brown-gray light. Her skin took on the texture of stone, and when the first cultist dagger struck her arm, the blade shattered against her flesh. She grabbed the cultist by the throat with one stone-enhanced hand and squeezed. Bone cracked like kindling. Healers established position. Thorn's voice boomed across the chaos. Combat teams engage and eliminate. Don't let them complete that ritual. Caden activated Crimson. The scarlet light erupted from his palm, racing up his arm in those familiar patterns. Power flooded his muscles, sharpened his senses, pushed his perception into that crystalline clarity, where every movement slowed just enough for him to read and counter. The dam holding back his emotions cracked, and rage, hot and primal and utterly intoxicating, flooded through him. He moved. The first cultist he reached was in the middle of a spell, dark energy gathering around his hands. Caden's sword took the man's head before the spell could complete. The second cultist tried to dodge, his body beginning to glow with that reddish light of forced crimson enhancement. Fast, but not fast enough.
Bone Fang punched through his chest, piercing the heart. Around him, the battle descended into controlled chaos. Nara, Steel, invited his backup, swung her massive axe in wide arcs that sent cultists flying. Jarek Stone fought with the economical brutality of decades of experience, his own weak crimson giving him just enough edge to match the enhanced cultists. Fen and 2 other healers had taken position near the chamber entrance, their staffs glowing with viral energy as they waited for the inevitable wounded. The cultists fought like fanatics. When a B-rank hunter named Corvin cut down 3 of them, the cultists' response was to detonate one of their own, a suicide explosion of dark energy that wounded Corvin and killed 2 of his teammates. When Myra's stone fist pulverized another cultist's skull, the dead man's companions simply stepped over the corpse and kept chanting, kept feeding power into the ritual. They're stalling, Caden realized, trying to hold long enough for the portal to complete. The shards, Kai shouted, seeming to reach the same conclusion. Destroy the shards, break the circle. But getting to the center of the chamber meant pushing through 15 cultists who'd formed a defensive line. And behind them, in the seal's exact center, stood a figure Caden hadn't noticed before. Tall, gaunt, completely bald, eyes that were pure black from edge to edge. Mehron, the Dark. The cult leader raised one long-fingered hand, and shadows exploded outward from this position. Not normal darkness, this was umbral energy, tangible and hungry. The shadows wrapped around 2 hunters who'd been trying to reach the seal, and when they receded seconds later, both hunters were dead, their bodies desiccated husks. Aetherus, Kai breathed, his voice tight with horror. He has Aetherus, soul energy. The paladin's eyes blazed with golden light. Everyone back, let me... Mehron moved. One moment he stood in the center of the seal. The next he was 10 meters away, emerging from a shadow cast by one of the pillars. Umbral teleportation, movement through darkness itself. His hand lashed out, black and white energy crackling around his fingers, and grabbed Jarek Stone's shoulder. Jarek screamed. It was the sound of absolute agony. Not physical pain, but something deeper, something fundamental being torn away. The hunter's body began to wither, skin pulling tight across bones, eyes sinking into his skull. His crimson energy, that weak but hard-earned power, was being drained, ripped from his soul and consumed. "No!" Myra's voice was raw. She charged toward Mehron, but 3 cultists intercepted her, forcing her into defensive combat. Jarek collapsed, his body hitting the stone floor with the hollow sound of something already dead. His face was frozen in that final scream, his eyes empty sockets, his skin like parchment stretched over bone. "Magnificent," Mehron said, his voice like wind through a crypt. His black eyes surveyed the battle with clinical detachment. "You brought me A ranks? How generous! Their souls will fuel the portal nicely." Kai was already moving, his sword wreathed in Luxar flames. "You will face judgment, cultist!" They met in a clash of light and shadow. Kai's blade burned with righteous fury, each strike trailing gold. But Mehron simply dissolved into shadow, reforming behind the paladin, his aetherus-wreathed hand reaching for Kai's unprotected back. Kai spun, his free hand coming up to form a barrier of pure light. The aetherus struck the Luxar, and reality seemed to scream at the contact of opposing forces. The paladin gritted his teeth, pouring more power into the defense. "Impressive," Mehron acknowledged. "Light and soul are natural opposites. This should be interesting." Around them, the battle raged. Caden cut down another cultist, then another, his crimson-enhanced speed letting him move through their defenses like smoke. But for every cultist that fell, the pressure on the remaining hunters grew worse. They were outnumbered, fighting on enemy ground, and their primary target was currently dueling their strongest fighter to a standstill. 2 more hunters fell to aetherus drains, their screams echoing off stone walls as Mehron's cultists grabbed them from behind, channeling his master's soul-devouring power. Their bodies joined Jarek's, husks, empty shells, monuments to the price of facing aetherus users. Kai was losing. The paladin's movements were slowing, his Luxar dimming. Mehron's aetherus wasn't just attacking his body, it was draining his energy directly, consuming the very power Kai used to defend himself. It was a perfect counter, and both of them knew it. "Your light cannot stand against the abyss's gift," Mehron said, pressing his advantage. His hand shot forward, faster than Kai could block, and touched the paladin's chest. Kai's eyes went wide. His body convulsed. Golden light flickered and died. No. Caden felt something inside him snap. Not the dam holding back emotions. That had broken the moment Crimson activated. Something deeper. Something that recognized Kai as not quite a friend, but someone who tried to understand him. Someone who'd shown compassion instead of fear when confronted with the impossible. Someone worth saving. I won't let him die. Caden pushed his crimson beyond the 3-minute limit he'd established in training, beyond the safe boundaries Myra had taught him. He pulled on the reservoir, on the well of power the shard had left in his chest, and he pulled hard. The scarlet light intensified, spreading from his arms to his entire body. Every vein, every artery, every capillary lit up like lightning frozen beneath his skin. His vision shifted, the world taking on a red tinge, and he could see the life force in every living thing around him, see it as threads of light connecting souls to bodies. 5 minutes, some distant part of his mind calculated, maybe 6 before my heart explodes. Worth it. He covered the distance to Mehron in a heartbeat, his sword already in motion. The cult leader sensed him coming, tried to dissolve into shadow, but Caden was too fast, too focused, too far beyond human limits. Bone Fang punched into Mehron's back, just below the left shoulder blade. The dark mage screamed, a sound of genuine shock and pain. He released Kai, who collapsed, gasping to the floor, and spun to face this new threat. His black eyes went wide with recognition. "You," Mehron breathed, "the child of the abyss, the 1,000th sacrifice." Something like hunger filled his expression. "Your soul, I can feel it, saturated with darkness, with 10 years of corruption. What a delicious prize." His hand lashed out, Aetherus crackling between his fingers, seeking Caden's chest. Contact. The soul-draining energy slammed into Caden, trying to latch on to his life force and tear it away. For a moment, Malaron's face lit up with triumph. Then his expression changed to confusion, then pain. The Aetherus that touched Caden's abyss-saturated energy recoiled like a living thing encountering poison. Caden felt the foreign power trying to drain him, felt it touch the reservoir where the shard's gift lived, and the crimson responded with absolute fury. The scarlet energy surged outward, flowing backward through Malaron's Aetherus like a river finding its source. The dark mage screamed, trying to pull his hand away, but it was too late. The backlash was already happening, the abyss-tainted power corrupting his carefully controlled soul energy. Malaron stumbled back, dark blood trickling from his nose, his black eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible! Impossible! Aetherus cannot!" Kai's sword took him through the chest. The paladin had recovered enough to strike, and with Malaron distracted by the backlash, his guard was down. Luxar-wreathed steel punched through the dark mage's heart, golden light burning him from the inside. "For Jarek," Kai said, his voice hoarse, "for all of them." Malaron looked down at the blade protruding from his chest. Then, incredibly, he laughed. Blood bubbled from his lips as he spoke. "You think this ends it? Fools!" He gestured weakly toward the seal. "The seal is complete. The portal, opening. The ancients wake." His black eyes found Caden, and despite the mortal wound, they burned with terrible knowledge. Child of the abyss, key to what comes. When the harvest begins, when Malkain calls, you will choose. Serve or die. There is no third path. "There's always a third path," Caden said quietly. "Is there?" Malaron's bloody smile widened. "We shall see." The cult leader's body went rigid. Then he collapsed, the light fading from his eyes. Malaron the Dark was dead, but his final words proved prophetic. Behind them, the seal pulsed once, twice. The 10 abyss shards flared brilliantly, their scarlet light consuming the chamber in a wave of crimson radiance. And where the seal's center had been, just a rent in reality, now there was a portal, a tear in the world, 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide, revealing absolute darkness on the other side. Darkness that moved, that breathed, that reached toward the mortal world with hunger that transcended physical existence. "Close it," Thorn roared. "Destroy the shards, now!" But even as hunters rushed forward, Caden could see it was too late. The portal was self-sustaining now, fed by the ritual's completion. Breaking the shards might weaken it, but it wouldn't close it. A low, grinding sound filled the chamber, the sound of reality being forced aside to accommodate something that shouldn't exist. And through the tear, something looked back at them. Red eyes. Dozens of them. Hundreds. "Fall back," Kai commanded, his voice cracking. "Everyone out! Fall back to—" The first creature emerged. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, but wrong in every way that mattered. Too many legs, arranged incorrectly. A mouth that opened vertically instead of horizontally, full of crystalline teeth. Skin that seemed to absorb light, creating a nimbus of darkness around its body. An abyss creature, in Greyhaven. The thing lunged at the nearest hunter, moving with speed that defied its awkward anatomy. The hunter, a C-rank Caden didn't know, tried to block with his sword, but the blade passed through the creature's partially insubstantial body. Those crystalline teeth found his throat, and the hunter's scream was cut short. "Everyone out!" Thorn's bellow finally cut through the shock. "Fighting retreat! Protect the healers! Go!" They fled. Up the passage, hunters carrying their wounded, Fen and the other healers frantically trying to channel viral into the worst injuries while running. Behind them, more creatures poured through the portal. Small ones, fast ones, things that screamed and gibbered in voices that hurt to hear. Caden's crimson was fading, the 5 minutes he'd burned through, leaving him weak and trembling. But adrenaline kept him moving, kept his sword swinging at anything that got too close. Beside him, Myra's stone skin was cracked and bleeding, but she fought like a demon, her fists breaking creature after creature. They burst from the mausoleum into the graveyard, into blessed fresh air and the darkness of normal night. The hunters scattered, some collapsing from exhaustion, others turning to form a defensive line. The creatures didn't follow. They reached the mausoleum entrance and stopped, as if held by some invisible barrier. They screamed and clawed at the air, but they couldn't cross into the city proper. Yet. Thorn did a rapid head count, his scarred face growing darker with each number. They'd gone in with 15 hunters. They were coming out with 11. 4 dead, including Jarek Stone. "Seal the entrance," Thorn ordered. "Gareth, get to the city guard. Tell them to cordon off this entire area. No one gets within 100 meters. Kai, can you create a barrier?" The paladin nodded weakly, his face pale. "Temporary, until we figure out how to close the portal permanently." "Do it." While Kai worked, channeling golden light into a ward that would hopefully hold, Caden sank to the ground beside a crumbling headstone. His hands were shaking, actual shaking, something that hadn't happened since the Shadow Wolf. His crimson was completely depleted, his energy reserves scraped empty. Fen dropped down beside him, the young mage looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. "You're going to feel like death tomorrow. Pushing that hard, that long, you damaged something. I can feel it. Internal tearing, microscopic fractures in your bones. Will I live? Yeah, but you need rest. Real rest, not your usual sleep on the floor for 3 hours routine." Fen's hands glowed weakly with viral, channeling what little power he had into Caden's body. It helped, but not much. Myra appeared, her stone skin fully faded now, revealing dozens of cuts and bruises. She looked at the mausoleum, at the creatures still clawing uselessly at Kai's barrier, and her expression was bleak. "Malaran was right," she said quietly. "This isn't over. The portal's open, creatures are coming through, and if what he said about the ancients waking is true." She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Caden followed her gaze to the portal's location, hidden now inside the mausoleum, but still present, still pulsing with that sickly light. Malaran's final words echoed in his mind. The seal is collapsing. The ancients wake. And the most terrifying part? Deep down, in that place where the shard's power lived, Caden felt it too. Something vast and terrible was stirring in the darkness.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved. Have a nice day.